Okay, I want to thank everyone for being here, those who are here in person and those who are online as well. Your presence means a lot to us. It's always dangerous to start off by thanking people, but I'm going to run that risk. Just want to thank a few people in advance. First of all, to Henny and to the entire High Lifeline family, for everything you have done and continue to do for our family. To Esty's teachers that are here in the entire KHDS family, we are very appreciative as well. I was actually fine up until like 30 seconds ago. To a few of our friends that flew in, just surprised us from New York. There's simply no words. And of course, to our friends and our family. And most importantly, to Rabbi Goldberg, who, as you see, I'm not in a position to give a shiur to speak tonight. And so Ariel and I texted him a few weeks ago and asked if he'd be willing to share some Divrei Torah. And of course, as with everything else, he was more than gracious. And we're very appreciative. After Shiva, we received a letter from one of the child life specialists at St. Jude. These amazing and sensitive young women helped distract Esty, helped her understand procedures. And I've shared with this in the past, but it continues to haunt me. One of the specialists wrote to us the following. She said, "I'll never forget that we played a game, and I found out so much about her. One of the questions was, what do you want a stranger to know about you? Esty answered, I want a stranger to know that I am a kind person." Ariel and I have reread that many times because most children want to be baseball players or ballerinas, actresses or princesses. But when asked what she wants to be remembered by, Esty simply said, a kind person. And that's who she was. She always put others before herself, always said please and thank you, and had impeccable midos. She was polite, caring, considerate, and a good person. I shared a lot of stories at Shiva and during the Levaya, and I know Rabbi Goldberg is going to share some more tonight, so I'm not going to belabor the point, but I do want to add something from perhaps my unique perspective. The Gemara in Yerushalmi, and I want to thank my dear friend Rabbi Ginsburg for sharing this with me. The Gemara in Yerushalmi tells us K'shmei Rabbi Yevo, that when Rabbi Yevo passed away, so it was brought to Olam Haba, and he was showed the vast amounts of his reward. And they showed him this vast amount of reward. Kishashal, Rabbi Yevo asked, Lemi kolela, who does this all belong to? Who's this all reward for? Anulo, they answered him, Kol Eila b'shvil Rabbi Yevo. All of this is for you. Hispalei, Rabbi Yevo couldn't believe it. V'amar, and he said, Aunam Kol Eila b'shvili. Is it true that all of this reward, all of this is because of me? V'ani amarti larik yagati, and he said, this entire time I thought, if anything that I did it matter? Did anyone notice? Larik yagati, was it worth anything? And the Gemara is so striking because I think it captures how so many of us feel all the time. We go through life and we wonder, does anything that I do matter? Does my learning matter? Does my davening matter? Does my chesed matter? Does my smile matter? And then Rabbi Yevo had this epiphany when he got to Olam Haba, when he realized he's palei, he couldn't believe it. He says, Kol eila b'shvili, all of this is because of me. And I think that's the message that I want to share with you tonight, is that sometimes we wonder, what impact am I making? It says the Yerushalmi, yes, Never underestimate the difference and never underestimate the impact that you can make. As you saw from the title of the Shiur that Rabbi Goldberg will be giving, it's called A Smile Can Change the World. And the beauty, as I spoke about at this amazing kids program this morning, the beauty of kindness and the beauty of a smile is that it costs you nothing. A smile, whether it's kindness, a compliment, whether it's giving someone your full attention when you're talking to them, whether it's checking in on someone who may be bedridden or have had an illness recently or going through a difficult time, whether it's flowers or baking a challah. There are so many things that we can do on a regular basis, so many acts of chesed and kindness, most of which cost us absolutely nothing. Kindness is something that doesn't matter your age, doesn't matter your stage of life, it doesn't matter whether you're young, old, retired, or have a full-time job. Kindness is something that every single one of us can do. And as someone reminded me when they saw the video of me sharing that this morning, a friend reached out from New York and said, the beauty of kindness is it doesn't matter your location either. You could be in Israel, New York, you could be in Wichita, it doesn't matter. Everyone has the ability to reach out, everyone has the ability to do an act of kindness. It's something that all of us can do. One of the most beautiful stories I've read is from Rav Shlomo Hoffman, who records that he once was talking to his Rebbe, Rav Isaac Shiur, then the Rosh Yeshiva of Hebron. And he asked him, he said, you always talk about chesed. He said, but I'm a yeshiva guy. I don't have a lot of money. I don't have a lot of resources. How is it that I'm supposed to be able to do kindness? And Rav Isaac Shiur looked back at Rav Hoffman and said, do you know how to smile? He said, yeah. He said, that's all you need to do. That's the biggest act of kindness that a person could do, and it costs you nothing. It takes almost none of your time. And so kindness is something that all of us can do, and sometimes we don't even realize the repercussions or the consequences of the kindness that we do. But as Rabbi Yevo reminds us in the Gemara in Yerushalmi, Kol Eila Lami Eila, who does this belong to? Anu Lo Kol Eila B'Shvil Rabbi Yevo, all of it's to you. The Yud Gimel Nam Rai Parsimon, that all of that vast reward that you never realized the difference that you made, but the consequences and the ripple effect. At the funeral, I shared that one of my biggest fears in life was that Esty would one day be forgotten. I'm extremely grateful to the community, to our friends and our family, to making sure that that has not been the case. Whether it's the amazing playground that, please God, in the next few months will be constructed. There's more about that in the lobby. Whether it's the amazing iShine like Esti program at High Lifeline that's run every week locally here at Katz Yeshiva High School. Whether it's the Parsha Pearls that comes out every week, which Divrei Torah, Parsha Perspectives with the write-up. Whether it's our friends that just ran for High Lifeline and raised over $85,000. Whether it's the Esti program at KHDS. There's so many other programs. We are so grateful that those of you who are in this room and listening, our friends and our family, have made it their life mission alongside ours to make sure that Esty very much is remembered and that she stays alive. Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, when he writes about saying Kaddish, and he writes about Yizkor, so he writes that we make a misnomer about saying Kaddish. He says everyone thinks that Kaddish is such a big deal, and of course it's important. But he says far bigger of a deal is being a nice person. Far bigger of a deal is just being a mensch. He says to go on the derech hayashar, to just do the right thing, which Esty used to always remind her siblings to simply do the right thing. And then at the end, the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch writes the following: V'yesh lo la'adam letzabos es banav lahachazik be'ezo mitzvah. That a person should instruct his children to pick one mitzvah that each of your children is going to embody, that each of your children is going to excel at. And if your children are able to take that to heart, and each child is able to take one mitzvah, listen to his language, nechshav yoser min hakadosh. He says that's more important and that counts more than any kaddish that could ever be said. Well, I don't know that Ariel and I ever had a conversation about Esty, about kindness. It came so naturally to her. And yet she excelled in it. That was her mitzvah. And what's even more amazing is that even though the stories go on and on about Esty's kindness, her smile, the way she protected people from bullying, it's important to remember that Esty was just a normal kid. I would come home to watch her flipping on couches, doing headstands, playing soccer, doing arts and crafts, swimming like a fish, doing her homework without ever being asked, making up silly songs with her siblings, or sneaking candy from a kitchen. Esty, it's important to remember, was just a normal kid. And yet she had her mitzvah. Her mitzvah was kindness. Her mitzvah was bringing just a little bit more light into the world, sharing her smile and sharing the love. And so I ask every single one of you, as you leave the room this evening and will be inspired by the words of Rabbi Goldberg, to take one act of chesed that you can do in Esty's memory. One thing that you're going to take with you, perhaps share it with your family, your children, your grandchildren. You're going to say, this is something that we're going to be doing differently. And every time we do it differently, we're going to think about the impact of Esti Moskowitz. And that's the way that all of you can help us elevate her special neshama. And if everyone does that, think about and imagine the ripple effects that will be caused of kindness in the world. If you do chesed, and then someone says you do chesed, and they do chesed, and it goes on and on and on. Think about how much kindness we can bring into the world. And therefore, it's very fitting that the last Mishnah, in Shas Mishnayos, finishes with this very idea. When we got it from Shiva 2 years ago, I decided that I was going to finish Shas Mishnayos for Esty's first Yahrtzeit. It's 12 Mishnayos a day, but every single day when I sat down to learn, it was my opportunity to learn together with Esty. And I decided to continue it this year as well, and please God, going forward, B'li neder. And so I'm going to make a Siyum on Shas Mishnayos, last Mishnah in Maseches Uktzin. Amar Rabbi Shiur ben Levi Yasir HaKadosh Baruch Hu la'anchil kol tzadik b'tzadik shlosh meos ve'asar olamos. That Lasi Lavo Hashem's going to give each tzadik 310 worlds. Again, what the Gemara in Yerushalmi had described, this vast amount of reward. Shneimar la'anchilo avah yishvil tzosei mamalei. Amri Rav Shimon ben Chalaf to Lomatza Kadosh Baruch Hu Kli Machzik Bracha LeYisrael Ela Hashalom. Shneimar Anaycha B'tzima Anayos Lemo Yitein Anay Barecha Samo Bashalom. Hashem says at the end of learning all of Shas Mishnayos, and at the end of learning about Peah, and at the end of learning about Demai and Kodshim and Taharos and all the holidays and every of the intricacies that go into all of it, and Tuma and Tara, Hashem says there's one Kli. There's one vessel that can hold all of the bracha in the world, and that's simply Shalom. It's simply learning to get along with everyone. And I think that's the message, that if every single one of us takes the chesed, takes the kindness, chooses one act that we can do within our own homes and spread that little by little. Lo matzah Kadosh Baruch Hu kli machzik bracha liYisrael ela hashalom adron alach shisha sidrei mishnah. Adron alach shisha seder taras shisha sidrei mishnah hadron chalan daiton alach seder taras udat chalan l'nisna minach seder taras shisha sidrei mishnah l'isas minan lo ba'alma dain lo ba'alma ta'aseh. Harav na Adonai Eloheinu as divrei sarascha b'finu b'fio samcha beis Yisrael v'niyah kulanu anachnu b'tze'etzeinu b'tze'etzei amcha beis Yisrael kulanu yodei shemecha l'odei sarasecha lishma me'abayisei chachmein mitzosecha ki le'olam hili b'sami b'chukecha l'man lo evosh le'olam lo eshkach b'chudecha ki bam chisani baruch atah Adonai lamdeni chukecha amen 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 sela va'ed modiman nachnu l'fanecha Adonai Eloheinu v'le'oseinu Shesamta chalkinu miyoshvei beisamedrash shelo miyoshvei kronos. Anu mashkim vehi mashkim. Anu mashkim l'divrei Sora vehi mashkim l'dvarim b'teilim. Anu amelim vehi amelim. Anu amelim l'kab b'sachar vehi amelim vehi b'kab b'sachar. Anu ratzim vehi ratzim. Anu ratzim l'chaylam haba vehi ratzim l'reshachas shenemar ve'atalim tordim l'reshachas anshe tamim mir l'yitziv v'yimim ve'ani avtach bach. Yiratzom avanecha Adonai Elohai. Shem Shazar Tamil Saim Seder Taras Shisha Sidrei Mishnah Kach Tazreini Lahaskil Sar Musar Machel Masaim Lilma Lami Lishmor Lasos L'chaim Es Kol Divrei Salmo Tarasecha B'Yava Schuz Kol Atanaim Es Amidei Chachamim Hanizkar B'Seder Taras Shisha Sidrei Mishnah Tamil Li Ulazari Shelo Samush Torah Mipi Umipi Zari V'Zera Zari Ad Olam. Yikiyam bi b'salecha tamche osach b'shachrecha tishmor alecha ve'akitzosa hisi sichecha. Ki vi yiru yimecher v'yosifu lecha shnos chayim orach yamim b'minah Bismillah Osher V'chava Adonai Ozai Moyitein Adonai Baruch Hasamo Bashalom. Skadav, Shmei Rabbi, Yamadu Asili Schadasa, L'chaya Mesaya, La Saka Yason L'chaya Olma, Ubibnei Kartu, Dishlim Mishpach Lebe Hekla, Begava, Mer Kartu Chana Nufra Me Arava, Sava Puchana Dishmai La Asra, Yamlich Kuchabarichu, Makusevi Karev, Yatzmak Nukanevi Karev Shifei, Hai Chonami Mechon Mechai Defo Beis Israel, Bangala, Zman Karev, Yimru Amei. Hey Shmei Rabban Barak, L'Lam Lunei Amaya, Yisbarak, Yishabak, Yisbar, Yisramam, Yisnasei, Yisadar, Yisalev, Yisalal, Shmei Kedusha, Bariko, Eilam Mikober Chazav, Shira, Sav, Chazav, Nechmasa, Damaran Be'amav, Yimru Amei. Al Yisrael Rabbanan Ba'altamadei, Ba'alkotamadei, Samadei, Ba'alkoman, Daski Be'raisa, Dibasar, David, Ba'asar, Be'asar, Yehelon, Elchon, Shlomarab, Elchin, V'chizarakmi. Hain Arichin, Mazon Arichair, for Kon Mikadam, Avon, Vishmaya, Be'arav, Yimru Amei. Hey, Shlomarab, Amin Shemaya, V'chaim Tov, V'malena, Po Yisrael, Yimru Amei. Shalom, Ramav, Yaseh Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Yisrael, Yimru Amei. It's a great schos, privilege, and we're very grateful to call upon Rabbi Goldberg.
Rabbi Moskowitz listed a number of ways that the community has come together, individuals, to be able to memorialize Esty, to ensure she will never be forgotten. Really what I want to focus on for the few minutes tonight is that Esty doesn't need the community, in some ways doesn't need us to keep her alive, because she keeps living. She's living through the impact and the influence that she continues to have. And I know that because it's one thing when people come to a family when they're sitting Shiva in the acute phase of their grief and their loss, and they share the way the loved one is no longer here impacted their lives. And often, and especially when it's a young person, a 9-year-old, only 9 years of life. So even in future years, in an effort to confront, to console and comfort, they'll invoke the same stories that were told at Shiva, and the same memories and the same impact from when she was in this world. But in the case of Esther Tehila Bas Gavil Pinchas, the stories are still being written. The stories are just now being told, and her impact and her influence and her smile and her light and her inspiration on so many is still being felt. And so while we will continue to fulfill that promise, not as any favor other than to ourselves, to ensure that Esty will never be forgotten and that her legacy will continue to live and she will continue to inspire, she doesn't need us. Because in those short years, that impact was so powerful and so deep and left an impression on so many that it's happening on her own and in her own way. Contemporary of Esty's child in her class several months ago was being mistreated. Children sometimes can be unkind to one another, and this child was being bullied, was being mistreated. When the child came home and was being held, and the mother said, "Are you okay?" the child said, that I wish Esty were here. She would have stood up for me. She would never let me get bullied. A year and a half, 2 years after Esty's passing, her peers, young people, children, when they think of who would have been their source of strength and who would have stood up for them and whose smile would have lit up their life, young people 2 years later are still thinking of her. Her smile lit up the world. In happy times, joyful and gleeful and fun times, and in the darkest of times, in the darkest of circumstances and painful chapters, that smile continued to light up the world. And like a candle, a smile can light many lights and in itself does not get diminished. The beauty of a candle, and a candle is reflective of the neshama, Kiner Hashem Nishmas Adam. Candle is lit to memorialize and think about in Yizkor and Yahrtzeit and so on. A candle can light countless candles and its flame never gets diminished or extinguished as a result. It just continues to light, and every candle that's lit from one of the candles that's lit from the original candle continues to spread that light. The smile is the same thing. If you smile at 5 people and those 5 people smile at 5 more people, and exponentially the joy and the smiles and the positivity and the happiness, it grow, and it's all attributed to that original candle. And even after that first candle burns out, as those lights continue to be lit and illuminate the world, it's all credited back to that candle that set it in motion. And so how can we follow her footsteps? How can we emulate her ways? How can we learn from her? How can her smile continue to ignite and light ours? So as Rabbi Moskowitz said, we can leave here tonight smiling at more people, and her smile will continue to contagiously spread. Like a candle, her light will continue to burn and illuminate the world. When Yaakov Avinu has a chance to come down to Mitzrayim, to Egypt, Yosef in this moment is going to see finally the conversation, the meeting between the 2 powerhouses in his life, Paro, the most powerful man in the world, whom Yosef serves, and Yaakov, Yosef's father, we learned everything from and admires the most. The Torah tells us we get to be a fly on that wall to witness and hear that conversation. Such a disappointing, pedestrian conversation. They talk seemingly about nonsense and nothing. You'd think the most powerful person of the physical world and the most powerful spiritual giant of the world, they would talk about things that move the cosmos, and instead Paro asks Yaakov, how old are you? And Yaakov answers, 130, but I've had a difficult and challenging life. And I haven't lived as long as my parents. Yaakov is Paro, and then all of a sudden Yaakov gives a bracha, and that's it. He heads out. And we, the readers and learners of Chumash, listen and say, what? That's it? That's what they spoke about? This is their conversation? That's what the Torah relays and records, and there are many answers that are given to this conversation. One of them, by the way, the Ksav HaKabbalah, or Yaakov Tzvi Mecklenburg, says that this is an example of what he calls, and he coins, Chazal already used this term, Dvarim Shel Ma Bekach, which loosely translates to small talk. Yaakov and Paro were happy to have small talk. And the Ksav HaKabbalah says, very driven people, very time-efficient people, they have no tolerance for small talk. Who has time for small talk? But small talk has an enormous place. Because of every conversation and every interaction always has an agenda. There's always a goal, there's always something I need to get out of it. Then I don't really care about you. I care about the agenda of this conversation. I care about the results or the outcome. I care about what I want to achieve. But if I engage in small talk with you with no ulterior motive and agenda, then what I really care about is you, is this relationship. And so when 2 people shoot the breeze, talk about the weather, and make small talk about nothing consequential, there's no agenda, there's no outcome. All there is a relationship, and that's a powerful lesson, that if the great Yaakov sees the value and virtue of small talk, then there's a value of connecting with others. It's one of the ways that we can bring positivity into this world, is to not need to always be so efficient and get something out of every conversation, but simply to notice, to care, to connect with no agenda at all. Paro asked a simple question, and instead of giving the answer, instead of just answering how old he is, Yaakov gives a running commentary of his life. Why I look so old? It's because my life has been difficult. I've had challenges. I've had misery. And then we have this bracha at the end of this conversation, and that's it. Chaim Shmulevitz has a brilliant insight in the Sichos Musar. The Das HaKedim quotes a medrash that tells us that when Yaakov said, "My years have been few and miserable," Hashem said, "I saved you from Esav. I saved you from Lavan. I returned Dinah to you. And after a 22-year separation, I reunited you with Yosef. And all you can think about, all you have to talk about, all you focus on, all you're drawn to is the pain and the suffering, is the challenge. You define and characterize your life as misery after everything. And as a result of Yaakov's negativity, the Medrash tells us that Yaakov was punished. Years were taken away from him. Yaakov told Paro he had not yet reached his father's age, and he never would. And the short conversation, the Medrash says, had 33 words in it, and because there were 33 years in it, Yaakov experienced a deficit of 33 years. He didn't make it to 180, he made it to 147. Chaim Shmulevitz is bothered, because he says if you take a closer look at the text, if you look a little bit more carefully at the narrative and at the conversation, and if you bother to count up the words to confirm the Medrash is accurate, you'll notice that you only arrive at 33 words if you include Paro asking Yaakov, "How old are you?" So why is Yaakov accountable? Why does that count on his ledger? Paro's words. He should be accountable for his words, not Paro's. He should be accountable for his own negative answer. Why is he responsible for Paro's question? Chaim Shmulevitz says a tremendous yisod. A yisod that, I don't know if Esti ever learned the Sichos Musar of Chaim Shmulevitz, but intuitively and instinctively she understood, she knew, and she lived at such a young age. Why did Paro ask Yaakov this question? How old are you? Tell me about your life. What precipitated, what led Paro to ask that question? Who meets someone for the first time, someone extraordinary of deep substance and profound wisdom, and utilizes and uses their time to say, how old are you? And what's your life been like? It says of Chaim Shmulevitz, you know why Paro asked that question? Because Yaakov wore his troubles and his misery and his stress on his face. I couldn't say this, but Chaim Shmulevitz does. That when Yaakov walked in the room, he projected pain and suffering and challenge and sadness. And Paro observed and imbibed this negative energy, and he wanted to understand what's going on and where did this come from. And it shouldn't come as a surprise that when Yaakov says, my life has been difficult, Paro ends the conversation rather quickly. And so Chaim Shmulevitz says that ultimately Yaakov is accountable not only for the words that he said in his answer, but for the fact that what he projected, what he wore on his face, the energy he put in the room, is what led and precipitated Paro to ask that question. Because no matter what we're going through, no matter what we live, we have the choice to project positivity and positive energy and happiness and joy and a smile. And if Yaakov would have walked in that room with a smile that lit up the palace, Paro would have never asked that question. So included in the 33 words, included in what Yaakov was accountable for, were the words that Paro said, because Yaakov elicited it through the disposition, through what he wore on his face. Rav Yisrael Salanter famously says that a person's face is a reshus harabim. Our face is not public, is not private property. It's not our own. We don't get to choose how we wear it. Our face is a public thoroughfare. It's public property. It's reshus harabim. We share it with the public, and we walk in a room. It's the energy that we project. It's the energy that we share. It's what we draw out from others. It's how we impact the environment around us. And Esti, in her short life, went through more pain and challenge than many, many times her age. And I can tell you I had the schus, and it was a schus, that my dear friends, my brother and sister, let me come spend a few minutes in Memphis with her. In a hospital, in a bed, with all kinds of tubes. That same smile as if she were on a playground, or doing art or gymnastics or learning Torah in her class with her friends. I don't think she read a book or anyone gave her a shmooze or musar or a sichos musar about how important it is when the nurses come in the room, make them feel good and don't make them feel bad about the needles they bring with them. But it's who she was. And it's a very special neshama that intuits and that can be characterized at that young age at knowing that you are a Rishus HaRabim and that the smile on your face, no matter what you're going through, can transform a room and another life. It can have an impact on all around you. Yehuda, the great Yehuda, lost his wife and buried 2 sons and almost falsely accused his daughter-in-law and has to step up and confront the second most powerful man in Egypt and demand his brother back. Yehuda had challenges in his life by any stretch and by any measure. And yet when Yaakov's on his deathbed and he's giving a blessing to each of his children, he turns to his son Yehuda, and he says his eyes are darker than wine, his teeth are whiter than milk. Yehuda's a grown man at this point. Yehuda has achieved much. And his father, Yaakov, when reflecting back on his son, the biggest compliment he could give is he's got great teeth. His teeth are whiter than milk. Yehuda, Yehudalah, what great teeth you have. So white, so bright. Gemara Ksubas Daf Kuf Yud Aleph is bothered by this question and says Yaakov saw a quality in Yehuda that he admired. It wasn't just that his teeth were straight, he brushed and flossed regularly, or had them whitened. What he was telling Yehuda is, you know why I'm so proud of you? Because you have a habit of smiling. You flash those shiny white teeth to everyone that you see. That's your life, that's your legacy. Yehuda had might, he had power, Yehuda had strength. Yehuda confronts Yosef, the second most powerful man, not knowing it's his brother. Yehuda displayed enormous characteristics, and yet, when Yaakov has to highlight one, what he says is, what a smile you have. Everyone who knows you by your smile. And the Gemara, in fact, concludes that when a person shows the white of his teeth to another by smiling widely, it is more beneficial than giving the other person a cup of milk to drink. The Avos Rabbi Nassan adds, even if a person is unable to give your friend anything, you can't give money or resources or food, if you greet him pleasantly, if you give a smile, you've given all the gifts in the world, you've given everything the other person could need. Why is the comparison to milk? If you smile, it's like milk, because the white of the teeth, the white of milk, there's no cute vartlach in Torah. There's deep meaning. Ravol ben Ali Shiur writes, he says, milk, the calcium in milk, it nourishes and it nurtures. And when a person is growing, we tell children, drink your milk, make sure you have enough milk. You need to grow taller. If you want to nurture growth physically, we give milk. And if you want to nurture growth spiritually, you give a smile. You give a smile. If you want children to believe in themselves and believe in this world, then reach for the stars and you smile at them. If you want to nurture growth in others, then you give them a smile. Smile is a uniquely human expression. Dogs and cats and animals can't smile. Only humans can. And it's what nourishes and nurtures others. So Sefta and Brachos asked the question, Ne'ma Zacha Yehuda Lamachos, we spoke about it several weeks ago. Why did Yehuda merit the monarchy? Why was Yehuda the progenitor of kingship? The halacha, all kings have to descend. David HaMelech, Mashiach ben David, come from Yehuda. The Medrash offers 2 reasons, or rejects them, and ultimately settles on a third, that Yehuda has the character trait and passed it on to Nachshon, the leadership of Achrayis of taking responsibility. But I want to suggest, maybe based on the Gemara in Ksubas, you know why Yehuda had Malchus, kingship, leadership? Because of that smile. Smiling is royalty. Esti, Esther Hamalka, had Malchus. Her smile radiated royalty. She was regal. Again, no matter where she was and whatever she was wearing, even a hospital gown, she was regal and royal. Esther Hamalka, Esti, had Malchus because of that smile, that joy and that positivity that lit up the lives of nurses who take care of children for a living, but saw in Esty something unique and special and different. That kindness and that happiness and that positivity and that optimism. Esty's joy and her positivity led her to notice when someone else wasn't smiling. If your default position, if your instinct is to smile, when you see someone who's not smiling, others may not notice, it may not show up on their radar, but it did for her. When Yosef is sitting in that prison, and he has every right to retreat to a corner, wallowing in his own misery, the challenges of his life, alienated from his brothers, from his father, their attempt to kill him, ultimately settling on selling him into slavery. He rises to greatness only to be falsely accused, and now he's sitting alone in this world, languishing in prison. And he could retreat to a corner, put his head down, wallow and cry, and instead he sees his two prison mates. And he asks a question that so few others would. Madua penechem ra'im hayom. He says to the Sarafim and the Saramashkim, hey, Chevra, buddies, what are you so sad about today? What's with the long faces? What's wrong? What's going on? How can I help? How can I intervene? How can I put a smile on your face? And the Gemara tells us what day on the Jewish calendar was that? What day was it on the calendar when Yosef asked those questions? It was Rosh Hashanah. Because as it will turn out, noticing the pain and suffering of others became the Rosh Hashanah, this brand new beginning for Yosef. Because it was by asking that question, Madua Penechem Re'im Hayom, and ultimately hearing a dream and interpreting it, and that being remembered later, that led to Yosef's liberation from prison, his freedom. It led to his very freedom. And that's one of Esty's qualities as well. One of her teachers shared, I passed my old classroom the other day and looked in for a second and felt I could see Esty in the left corner. Not just davening from her new sitter for the first time, but helping the boy next to her find the page in the line. Over and over again. No one asked her to do this. She saw he was struggling and just helped. Not looking for an emet recognition or a candy because she knew it was the right thing to do. Someone needed help, so she was going to help. No one made an announcement, see if anybody near you can't find the place. She wasn't just looking at her new sitter, excited to hold her new sitter. Who has the spiritual peripheral vision to notice that someone near you, Madua Penechem Ra'im Hayim? What child has the spiritual peripheral vision? A heart that sees others for whom it's not coming as easily. But almost 2 years after she's left their world, her peers and contemporaries still say, if Esty were here, she would have stood up for me. She would have defended me. She would have had my back. When you smile, and when that is the default feature on your face, and you notice when other people aren't smiling, and you're devoted to put a smile on their face, you want them to be smiling together with you. One of the ways to make people smile is to compliment, is to notice and lift their spirits by acknowledging something nice in their life. Torah tells us when it comes to the Kohen Gadol, he wore a robe that had bells that were shaped as pomegranates on the hem. Pamon zahav v'rimon, pamon zahav v'rimon, ashulei ami'il saviv. And Chazal tell us that those bells that were on the bottom of that robe that the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, wore, they atoned, as each of the garments of the high priest did, this specifically for the mistake, for the failure and shortcoming of lashon hara, of gossip, the misuse and abuse of the power of speech. And indeed, there were 72 bells, not coincidentally the same number of the possible shades of white that could make someone a mitzorah, someone who spoke lashon hara, who gossiped and suffered the consequence. Now the question is, if you're trying to bring awareness to the importance of not misusing speech and inspiring people not to gossip, wouldn't it be more fitting, instead of having the high priest wear a garment that's going to ring with bells and make lots of noise, instead it'd be more fitting to institute silence in the Beis HaMikdash every day. Have a moment of silence, designate time, everybody's quiet. We don't want to abuse and misuse speech. To be mindful and careful of the gift and the power of speech, let's be silent. Let's honor speech through silence. Instead, Hashem prescribes, the Kohen Gadol wore this garment with bells that would ring and be loud and ring and ring. So I want to suggest to you an answer based on an insight from the Shemen HaTov. He notices later, in Parshas Metzora, the Torah tells us, the priest would order 2 live clean birds, which were an atonement for the Metzora, the person who spoke ill of others, who gossiped, who slandered, who hurt the feelings of someone else, in order to achieve atonement, in order to rehabilitate and return to the community. So the korban was 2 live clean birds, shtei tziporim chayos tahoros. Why birds? If it's for abusing speech, why 2? So Chazal tell us because birds chirp, 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 and gossiping is like chirp, chirp, chirp. So a bird is what atones for the misuse and abuse of speech, because one chirped a little too much and wasn't careful in what they said about others. The Zohar wonders, so why 2? If a person spoke lashon hara, abused and misused the power of speech, so bring 1 bird, atone with 1. So the Zohar says 1 bird corresponds with bad speech, evil speech, and the other bird corresponds with good speech, positive speech. But what does that mean? So Shemen HaTov explains the following. He says that sometimes we have the opportunity to offer positive reinforcement. Sometimes there's a chance, there's a moment. Someone needs to pick me up, and we could offer a compliment. You can notice their new clothing, or their new hairdo, or the new pair of glasses they're wearing. You can notice they did a great job as the chazan, the balkore, or the speech that they gave. You could notice the caterer, how good the food was. You could notice your host, thank you for taking care of me. There was an opportunity to give a compliment. There was an opportunity to lift spirits. There was an opportunity to make someone believe in themselves and feel good in themselves. And yet, if we're silent, if we're quiet, we haven't necessarily violated bad speech. We didn't slander or gossip. We didn't use our words to hurt. You might think you haven't done anything wrong. It's a missed opportunity. Missed a chance. But it's wrong. Torah is teaching an important lesson, that a lack of positive reinforcement, the missed opportunity to offer a compliment or say something nice, can be just as demoralizing as negative speech, sometimes even worse. And that's why a person who misused speech brings 2 birds. 1 for the times that they used negative speech, spoke negatively about another, and the other for when they failed to say something good, failed to offer a compliment, failed to lift the spirits, failed to say something that would put a smile on someone else's face. And that's why 2 birds. And perhaps, based on that insight, we can suggest that's why the Kohen Gadol, he didn't wear a quiet or silent garment. There wasn't a moment of silence in the Beis HaMikdash. He wore bells. Because the answer to wrong speech is not to remain silent. The offer to wrong or negative speech is to use the power of speech to positively impact people's lives, to make our compliments ring like bells. Our appreciation and our recognition and admiration should reverberate like bells and like chimes, to be positive and to offer compliments to others. And that too is Esti, to express gratitude, to show appreciation, to offer a compliment, to say a kind word, to lift the spirits of other people. The Magen Avraham quotes the Sefer HaKavanos, the teachings of the Arizal recorded by his closest disciple, Rav Chaim Vital. And he writes that 4 of the mitzvahs that involve remembering an event or an idea are alluded to in the bracha of Av Rabbah. We say every morning the bracha we say before Shema. The word lahodos lecha, to give thanks to you, he says, alludes to the mitzvah to remember Miriam's sin of speaking lashon hara. Miriam spoke negatively. She judged her brother unfavorably. And our mouths were created to praise and speak positively, not to denigrate others. And so the word lahodos lecha, to give thanks, corresponds with not to speak lashon hara. And the question is, there are all kinds of mitzvahs we do with our mouth. Davening, we make brachos, we eat matzah. There are countless sins we do with our mouth. Why are lahodos lecha, giving thanks, and speaking lashon hara? These are the diametrically opposites of the mouth's capacity. On the one hand, the mouth can speak lashon hara, Or alternatively, the opposite, the hodos l'cha could offer thanks. Bereznik from the Mir explains that in order for a person to express gratitude, the predicate to express gratitude is to have an ayin tov, to have a good eye. If you have a good eye, you see good in others, and you see the good others are doing for you, then you're going to be filled and swelled with gratitude. You're going to be predisposed to say thank you. To be grateful, you have to see good, identify good, be grateful for good. While a person who speaks Lashon Hara is the opposite. They're drawn to and they see the negative, the bad. Even if they have so much in common with the other person, but their ayin tova, hones in on what's missing, on the failure, on the shortcoming, on the difference. And because they have an ayin ra, they see, they're drawn to the negative, to what's missing, to what's different. They ultimately speak Lashon Hara. And so the opposites are lahodos lecha and Lashon Hara. Because to be grateful is to see the good, even amidst so much bad, even amidst so much challenge. But nevertheless, to see a little bit of good and to be grateful for it, to smile and be positive and to be appreciative. The Mishnah Avos relates that anyone who has the following three traits is the Talmud of Avram Avinu, and the first one is ayin tov, to have a good eye, to see the good in others. And that too is Esti. At a young age, she could be a teacher to so many of us and continue to have an impact and legacy in our lives. So rather than see the deficiency or the failure, to not see what's missing or to see the difference, but to find the commonality and to find the good, to find the admirable, to find the praiseworthy. And when we see that good, to have that ayin tova, to live with excitement, with a positive energy, and with a hope, to therefore then not only have a smile on our face, but want to put a smile on other people's face. To ask, Madua Panechem Ra'im Hayom, why are you sad? Let me help you find a place in the siddur. Why are you sad? Let me help you feel comfortable. You know, there's someone, we're very excited and honored and grateful to be able to build what may be the holiest place on this campus in our expansion. Not the sanctuary, not the Beis Medrash, but the place that young children will come to play and to learn and to practice positive midos and to smile and to have fun. Esty's playground. One of the wonderful families who are contributing to help make that happen, who don't fully live in Boca anymore, somewhat surprising that generous offer, shared what drove that generosity. Because when they were coming to Boca, at first, when they lived here more full time, their young daughter had major hesitations and came and wasn't feeling so connected and so belonging, and a lot of concerns as any young person or adult would about transitioning into a new community. And she pushed back at her parents about bringing her here, and I don't want to go to school, and I'm not going to be happy, and I won't fit in, and I don't belong. And that family happened to eat at the Moskowitz's that Friday night. And 2 minutes after Kiddush, Esty ran off with that girl her age. They weren't seen from the rest of the night. And when the family left and the girl walked home with her mother, she said, "Now I'm ready to move here." Now I know I'll belong. Now I feel like there's somebody who welcomes me, who cares about me. And so Esty continues to live. She's living. She's raising money for our playground. She's making people smile. She's making children remember not to bully one another and to stand up for one another, because she's the one who would have stood up for them. And that's the legacy. A very young girl didn't leave because it's not over, but it's the light that continues to shine and radiate and illuminate. The whiteness of her teeth, like that of Yehuda, our Queen Esty, the Malchus, the royalty, continues to light up this world when her smile makes us smile. Many in this room have difficult days. There are frustrating things. There are challenges we endure, from significant and consequential to the little things that are just part of life. And Esty smiled her way through it all. In the next difficult moment, the next frustrating time, someone's not behaving or responding exactly the way you want. The world is not responding on schedule that you set. Your flight's delayed, or you're sitting in traffic, or you're late for carpool, or the Wi-Fi is slow, or the waiter's too long to bring your meal. Think of Esty and just smile. Smile. When you smile, your physical, mental, spiritual health will improve. Smiling has been proven to be contagious. Nicholas Christakis, a Harvard professor, showed that just like yawning, one person yawns in a room and it sets off a chain reaction, it's contagious. So too, if one person smiles, smiling and positivity are contagious. And the candle that Esty was, that lit our candles and we will light others, her light will literally continue to shine. I want to close by sharing something one of her teachers shared about Esty that I think is so powerful and can continue to inspire us. A truly special student, a pure soul who came into this world illuminated with her light despite her young age, only 9 years old, a little girl with a huge heart, and yet you managed to touch the hearts of so many people. The teacher writes, I was privileged to be your teacher for only 5 months, but that short time was enough to leave an everlasting imprint on my heart. From the very first lesson, I saw that you were no ordinary child. You had an incredible curiosity, a unique joy, a true passion for learning. I saw the sparkle in your eyes every time you discovered something new, the radiant smile that filled your face with every small success. Your class was at the end of the school day, the 8th period, 3 in the afternoon. It was during the COVID pandemic, and by then everyone was exhausted, including me. But then I would walk into your classroom. And see you standing there, smiling from behind your mask, eagerly waiting to begin. And suddenly all my fatigue disappeared. Your smile gave me new energy. Your enthusiasm lifted us all. You learned with such excitement, with your whole heart and soul, it was contagious. Everyone in the class felt your joy, your love for learning, and wanted to be part of it. More than anything, she writes, I'll remember your heart, your big, kind heart that always cared for others. During Hanukkah, when we made dreidels from marshmallows and chocolate, you were so happy, not just because of the activity, because you had the chance to bring joy to your friends. You immediately started handing out plates, napkins, make sure everyone had what they needed and no one was left out. That was who you were, a girl who gave, who thought of others, who always looked for ways to make others happy and bring people together. And how can I forget your prayers? Every morning before I even reached your classroom, I could hear your voice in the hallway, praying with deep concentration, with joy, with true passion. You eagerly waited for the word of the week, and every chance you got, you would come ask me what it meant, making sure you understood correctly, lighting up with joy when you got it right. When you got it right. Esther Tehillah Basra Gabriel Pinchas, her candle still burns bright. And if every one of us are willing to ask Madua Panechem Ma'im Hayom, to not only be satisfied with a smile on our face, but if we see there's someone around us who doesn't have a smile on theirs, to ask, why the long face? Why you say, what can we do? How can we help? And indeed, a smile can change the world. Thank you so much for coming tonight. I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. There'll be a Marav in a couple of minutes here in the Grand Sanctuary. Thank you.